Another episode of Cool Cat Teacher Talk, where we talk about what matters in the classroom. Today, we're talking about building your platform with a purpose.
Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis. Get insights from top educators, tech tips, and inspiration to elevate your teaching.
This week's news segment, we're going to talk about one big story with a global implication. On Thursday, May 1st, 2025, Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, launched his eye scanning ID project. So I'm going to break this story down for you, give you 3 reasons people are looking for identity verification, and bring up some massive concerns for us as people rush to create some sort of global identification system. For those of you watching on video, you'll be able to see these articles on the screen. And if you're listening via radio or podcast, you can go to coolcatteacher.com/E898 and see the links. So first, let's give an overview of the story. World is formerly known as WorldCoin. It's opening 6 U.S. retail locations for eyeball scans and face scans. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, Nashville, Miami, and Austin. Lots of newspapers are saying, hey, get your identity verified for free. And you get a little bit of a share in World.com. So Sam Altman co-founded World with Alex Blania, a former theoretical physicist from Germany who now lives in Silicon Valley. World has partners with Visa and Match Group, which runs Match.com, Tinder, and Hinge. So first, how does this work? Well, you go up to an NVIDIA-powered AI orb in a verified location. Takes about 30 seconds to scan your face and your iris. And then it creates and stores a unique iris code to verify 2 things. Number 1, that you're human, and number 2, that you've never signed up before. So what do you pay? You pay nothing. The face part of the verification is optional. Then you can use the identity marker unique to you that is generated from your iris scan to apply for a World ID. You also receive, in return for registering for a World ID, some cryptocurrency as a share of the World company. World ID gives you the ability to sign into platforms like Minecraft, Reddit, Telegram, Shopify, and Discord. And Visa will introduce a World Visa card this summer, only available to those who have had their irises scanned by World. This summer, the Match Group will test World AI and age verification with Tinder in Japan. Now, you can wonder, well, how can one company control all this? Well, they do and they don't. The system they created for verification is supposed to be decentralized and open source and uses blockchain. But yes, they're going to have this iris scan data and face data. Alex Blania, the leader of this organization, claims that AI will soon dominate online activity and that as much as 95 to 99% of internet activity could be driven by AI rather than humans in the near future. So we need proof of humanness. So next, let's talk about why people think this is necessary. Problem number 1 is identity fraud. The global cost of identity fraud is projected to exceed $50 billion annually. The average person experiences an identity theft attempt every 14 seconds in the U.S., costing consumers over $1 billion in 2025. Healthcare identity fraud is costing over $5 billion each year in the U.S. And for financial organizations like Visa, it costs them over $9 billion every year. Cybercrime losses are about $10.5 trillion globally. The rise of AI has created a new player in town called synthetic identity theft. It uses deepfakes or forgeries, which is now seen to be about 85% of identity fraud cases. Problem number 2 is the need for age verification. We know that age verification doesn't work. When I started Facebook, I remember some of my son's 8-year-old friends on Facebook. 70% of kids aged 8 through 18 have accidentally encountered online pornography, often while searching for homework. 31% of kids aged 12 to 18 have lied about their age to access a website. 90% of children aged 8 to 16 have seen online pornography. 69% of teens receive online communications from strangers and don't tell a parent or guardian. And 86% of girls polled said they can chat online without their parents' knowledge. For example, Roblox has 54 million daily users, and nearly half are under age 13. Until 2022, Roblox lacked automated systems to detect grooming behavior. After they implemented a lot of these systems in 2025, BBC demonstrated how easy it is for predators to bypass age restrictions, and people in their 20s were able to message kids and get them to go off platform. Because of this, many countries are implementing age verification. Germany mandates biometric identification for access to pornography. France requires age checks. Countries like Australia have worked to go towards age verification and have had a lot of problems. Problem number 3 has to do with your dating apps. It's 2024, the top 10 dating apps were downloaded over 20 million times. So 1 out of every 10 people you might see on a dating site is a fake person. It could be for a scam, asking for money, or even harassment. Interestingly, Austin, Texas, and San Antonio, Texas encounter the most fake dating profiles, with Grindr and Christian Mingle having the most fake content. Maybe they're going to be doing some things with Match.com in that area with verification. The biggest problem now is also one of the things people are most excited about. It's AI. So phishing attacks have skyrocketed 4,151% since ChatGPT emerged in 2022. And more people click through AI-generated phishing attacks than ones written by humans. So let's talk about some practical issues. So first, we should protect student privacy. Last week in my news roundup, I talked about eye tracking, and they were using it to try to improve this ability of this math app to understand what students were struggling with. I expressed my concerns about the privacy that's attached to scanning somebody's face or eyes. So some people might say, hey, Vicki, my iPhone already does iris scanning, and so does my webcam. No, they do not. Webcams can be used for eye tracking, but they're not able to do iris scanning yet. That said, they can do face-to-face scanning and basic eyes. Your iPhone does face scanning, and with an attachment, it can do iris scanning. In addition, the ease that people have with hacking our webcams and hacking our phone cameras, we should protect ourselves. So the Washington Post and other news outlets are talking about how you should verify yourself because, hey, it's free. If it's free, you're the product. And in this case, it's free, so you're the product. What is this company getting out of this? Why do they want to scan all these? And why are they giving it away for free when you know it's cost them a lot of money? And here's the thing. Things can start as harmless, but can literally unleash the beast. For example, Social Security numbers were never meant to be national identification numbers, but can now ruin our lives if they fall in the wrong hands. Here's what they're saying on their website. World ID purely and anonymously proves you're a human online. Okay, sounds good, but it sounds kind of like incognito mode to me. In December 2023, did Google have to settle a $5 billion lawsuit about how they were tracking user data when they were in incognito mode in Google Chrome? Like incognito, does that mean incognito? Right? Nope, wrong. Distrust is widespread of companies. Only 24% trust companies to use their data ethically, and just 20% believe the government is doing enough to protect their privacy. A staggering 77% of people have little or no trust in social media leaders to handle privacy responsibly, and 71% have little faith in the government to have accountability over tech companies. So I want to dig a little bit deeper at the language that concerns me. If you go to the world.org site, it says World ID allows you to anonymously and securely verify that you are a real and unique human and not a bot for easy online verification like signing into social apps and ensuring fair online activities like voting or buying concert tickets. But that face authorization is an added layer of security that many use. Now, who owns World? The website Tools for Humanity is the parent organization of world.org. And they say we are home to over 400 developers, scientists, engineers, designers, creatives, economists, and other various optimists. Okay, so by stating this, they're basically saying if I'm skeptical, if I don't trust them, if I don't like the back-end systems, that I'm a pessimist, right? That's the kind of language that they're using on this site. I've included in the show notes an interview from last year with Alex Blania, the leader of this organization. And here's some quotes from that interview. He said, "World is about creating the largest identity and financial network on the planet, a very small feat goal, but with that ultimate mission." He also said it can be kind of a big force for freedom and individual empowerment. And also, the mission is very simple. It's about creating the largest financial and identity network on the planet. Lots of issues here, but number one, centralized biometric databases are vulnerable to hacking. If you don't want to fall in the volcano, don't climb around the edge. Okay, also, they're giving money to people. So I would argue they're targeting economically disadvantaged people. So what does this lead to? Okay, we stand on the top of the volcano. We have a real need to be there. We've got these legitimate issues. What happens when everybody who signs up for this visa, that there's lower fraud? Does it mean that people are going to start targeting people who don't have a global ID? Does it mean these companies are going to give a break or a discount to people who do sign up for global ID? And the rest of us who don't are going to have to pay higher rates if we won't sign up for it? What if certain organizations say, hey, the fraud is too high, and if you don't sign up for global ID, you're not going to be able to buy or sell here? Now, I'm not dismissing the reasons for this. I'm dismissing the implementation of this. What happens when people on these dating sites say, hey, we want to create a platform where we can guarantee that all the people on the dating platform are not only human, but have no STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. And you get tested and you can have a new verification that says, not only am I a human, but I'm disease-free. What happens when our students have to verify for SAT so all that fraud can go away? Force our students to give up their identity and register, even if they don't want to? And what if the people who are in charge of this decide that somebody like me, for example, a Christian, is offensive to their beliefs? And if I'm verified, but I'm a Christian, that for some reason I'm not welcome certain places. It gives you the ability to match all this data and discriminate. And so, like Social Security numbers, they didn't start off as a national ID, and it's literally ruined people's lives. Ultimate power ultimately corrupts. I don't think there's one person on this planet that can be trusted with this type of system. Yes, this is a problem, but I know that there's some moral, ethical people out there that can help work out a solution. But even if we do, just not going to register. I have too many concerns, too many privacy concerns. There's a reason it's for free. You're selling your future. You're selling it out. Now, there are a lot of things I could go into in Revelation, and this obviously is a step towards that. I'm not going into it here, but I do have great concerns for the classroom and the privacy we have, whether it's Face ID or whatever data that we're giving up. And yes, I know there's a reason to secure all our stuff. And I know phishing is a problem in schools. So there's so many things that we can wrap our hands around here, but here's the deal. We have got to be teacher sourcing these topics, educator sourcing, and talking about this, because it's about to totally be out of our hands of the average everyday person like me and you. So we've got to be talking about it and bringing up the issues and how can we solve these problems without handing over our whole lives to people we don't know or we don't trust. This ends with somebody being able to say that, Vicki, if you're not going to register, you are going to have to pay more. And eventually you're not going to be able to shop here because we're combating fraud and we're combating AI and all of these sort of things. Now, for those of you who say you want to pull the plug, you can't. We need people to have conversations about this stuff and dig into it. This is an emerging story. I mean, it just happened yesterday as I'm recording this on Friday, May 2nd. And this synthetic AI bots and agents are going to be a real issue. And bad actors are out there, and cybercrime is on the rise. There are issues that we can work together. And I want to be part of that conversation. I hope I've given you a lot of questions, a lot of things to talk about with your students, and that you get out there and you research on your own. See what you think about this and decide for yourself, but don't give away your identity too quickly. So we're getting ready to enter the show, and this is a pretty good segue into it of why we're talking about having a personal brand is so important. It's important because people matter more than ever.
Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis.
Last episode, we talked about how to build your influence, how we talk about platforms for both students and for teachers. You can see that show at coolcatteacher.com/brand tips. Now, John, not everybody wants to be a quote influencer, but we all have influence, don't we?
Mom, you've been blogging since I was 4, over 20 years ago, as you've gone through the ages of the internet.
If it's the ages of the internet, but okay, John, this is what happens, everybody, when your son interviews you. And it's been almost 20 years. We have that 20-year anniversary in December, don't we, John?
So take us back to the beginning.
I've been teaching since 2002, started blogging in 2005. And when I started blogging, John, I went to a conference called the GAETC conference, and I've been there before. And I was by myself. Nobody else wanted to go with me. It was about technology. Everybody's kind of like, okay, why does technology matter for me? When I go by myself, I'm always going to sit on the front row, and I'm always going to find people. I saw this man who had these really long ribbons. I could tell that he was presenting. And Pastor Michael Catt always says you become like the people that you meet and the people you hang around and the books you read and the places you go. There's so many amazing people in the world. And so I saw him and I'm like, I just want to learn what he has because I know I need to make classroom a better place. I'm a new teacher. I didn't start off in teaching. I know there's a lot I don't know. So I went up to him and I said something that now would be very embarrassing. I said, what's a blicky and how should I use it in my classroom? So I actually mixed the words blog and wiki, John. Okay.
A blicky is slang for a gun.
Oh, dear goodness. So I'm glad you told me that. But at the time, maybe 20 years ago, it wasn't slang for anything. It was slang for Vicki doesn't know what she's talking about. Now it's slang for a gun, so forgive me for that. But well, David Warlick, who was a big speaker at the time, wrote some great books. I've been telling this story for 20 years and nobody ever told me that. It takes your own kid producing the show to tell you the truth that you have been sounding like a dummy. The fact was I was a beginner. I was a newbie. I didn't know anything. And David Warlick looked at me with all the respect in the world and with kind eyes. He never once made me feel like a dummy. And he said, well, Vicki, it depends on what you want to do in your classroom. What do you want to do? I said, well, I've just gone through this big cooperative learning class, 20 hours, and I want to do cooperative learning in my classroom. He said, well, let's talk about the different options. And so we decided that a wiki would be the best thing for me to do in my classroom because I could do all the cooperative learning stuff that I wanted to do. Now, obviously, Wikispaces isn't here. The first month I used it, we were actually named Wikispace of the month, like within 2 months. I knew I had to start my blog for me personally because I wasn't ready to take it to my students. I went back to my hotel room that night after learning about all these Web 2.0 things, and I felt like I'd never heard about it before. And I looked at some of my notes from the previous year, and I'd had like 70 things on the list, and I did none of them. So I felt like a failure. I want to do the best. World class and God honoring. I knew I wasn't measuring up. I knew there was all this new stuff that had happened and that I had missed it. I got on my knees, which is what I do when I'm concerned or upset. So I got on my knees, tacky old 80s bedspread. I still remember it, like orange and green. And I'm like, Lord, I feel like a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm asking you to help me. I knew I had a lot to learn. I felt like a real calling in my heart. You need to start a blog. So I went home and I talked to your dad and Kip's like, well, how often do you feel a direct calling from God for anything? So he clearly told me to blog, scared me. Kip was the only one who really supported me. Everybody else thought it was a bad idea. You know, I even had a parent when they found out I was blogging who said, okay, people are going to come through the internet and bomb us. So there was a lot of, in our little tiny town, there's a crab bucket mentality. John, how do you keep a crab in a bucket?
Make them comfortable.
You actually put 2 of them in there. If you have one crab in a bucket, he'll crawl out. If you put 2 of them in there, when one tries to crawl out, the other will pull him back. And so you have to be careful, and you're a place that has a crab bucket mentality that doesn't want people to do anything different. Fortunately, I had the support. My husband, eventually my family. I started blogging, and I didn't know what to call it. So I sat down with some of my students. I was brainstorming. I had a list of like 100 names. Somewhere in there, my student said, well, Miss Davis, you're cool and we're the Wildcats, so why don't you be the cool cat teacher? So I started the blog, no plans to do anything but to learn new stuff and to share my journey as a newbie. And part of what I want to do is just share my journey learning new stuff because I'm still learning new stuff 20 years later. And to me, as a classroom teacher, arrogance is a turnoff. I've had my battles off and on with it, but I just want to be helpful. So, John, that's kind of how it started. I didn't plan to win any awards. A lot happened pretty quickly, and I'm really grateful for that. But it was really just somebody being kind to me, helping me get started, being respectful when I was a beginner, and just feeling a calling, starting that journey.
How important is it that whatever product you endorse, does their values align with you?
So I didn't really plan to get started with making money or anything when I started this, but pretty quickly I had some invitations first to speak at Princeton, to speak at a tech and learning conference, to talk about what was happening in the classroom. And I started having people reaching out to me to book me for things. I didn't really do anything for 3 or 4 years. I was part of a group of women. We called ourselves the Women of Web 2.0, founded by Jennifer Wagner. We interviewed all these amazing people. Couldn't keep going because it was just so much. I had you guys at home. Then a lady named Julie Lindsay reached out to me, and she was in international baccalaureate school in Bangladesh. And she said, "Hey, my students are studying The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. Your students are studying The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. Why don't we do a project together?" So back in those days, the internet was really slow. We connected our classrooms. We literally merged them together in a project called the Flat Classroom Project. Now, if you look for it now, you're not really going to find it. You will find our book, Flattening Classrooms, Engaging Minds. I have worked with a variety of educators where you literally merge your classrooms for 6 to 8 weeks. Things are happening really quickly. People are asking me to their conferences to talk about what we're doing in our classroom. Eventually, companies started reaching out to me for things. I kind of worked out, okay, I'm going to do this speaking thing. Flat Classroom took over my life. I had to step back from Flat Classroom Project, which is truly right up there as one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make in my life. When we went to distance learning in 2020, I pulled out my book, Flattening Classrooms, Engaging Minds, and realized I had a playbook for distance learning. We literally did not miss one day of distance learning. And I saw how God really prepared me personally to be able to run distance learning because all the skills that it took to help people all around the world collaborate were the same skills that I needed to collaborate with somebody who was stuck at home. Anyway, brands started reaching out to me. And I have a sign, the good name is better to be had than great riches, given to me by my guidance counselor, Miss Loesch, and gave it to me when I was a senior. I really had to look at that. Now, there's something called FTC guidelines. You have to be careful about those. So basically say that any financial relationship you have to disclose. And there's certain disclosures you can use. You can see them on the bottom of most of my blog posts. If you're doing affiliate income, like making money off of recommending books, you have to have a disclosure for that. If you have a sponsor, you actually have to disclose it at the top, right up of what they call above the fold, right up at the top of your blog post. And for many, many years, I've had people say, okay, I want you to put this link in, but I don't want you to mark that link as sponsored and I don't want you to disclose. My immediate answer is do not contact me again. You're asking me to be unethical and break the law, and I'm not going to do it. There was a season where a reporter was following me around. Well, it turns out he was going to do a big article on influencers and how they weren't disclosing their relationships appropriately according to FTC guidelines. Oh, thank you for dodging the bullet on that. So for me, that's really important. The other thing is it has to be a product I would recommend anyway. 15% of people who reach out to me, probably more like 5%, are ones I actually end up working with because it has to be my voice. They can't write for me. I have to test it. It has to be good. And if I find out it doesn't work, I just send it back and I don't write about it. No harm, no foul, right? I've never accepted money from anybody that I had to give it back to. Just really try to be careful with who I would represent or talk about. It had to be something I would represent anyway. My challenge has come when the AI age entered because there are a lot of AI apps out there that are highly irresponsible. They're not putting in student safeguards. I'm a mandatory reporter. And if a child says they want to harm themselves, I have to report it. Children are talking to AI about deep psychological issues. And AI is not a mandatory reporter. It should be. If they have a kid who's saying, I want to harm myself, or give me 10 ways to kill myself, or whatever, then it should report that. And right now, the mechanisms are not in place for that with most of these tools. The other thing is recommend my AI detector. I probably turned away $10,000 worth of AI detecting propositions. The problem is AI detectors don't work. AI detectors don't work. I went and tested all of them. I used stuff my students wrote. I used stuff that my students AI generated. They flat out don't work. They can say whatever because AI detectors don't work in their present state. Now, at some point, they may track student writing patterns. You can use Brisk to see what is the edit habit of the student. Do they place any large text in it? But the fact is, there's an AI bot out there right now. College professor at Georgia State said that the AI bot, a student did all their work in 28 seconds. And so that AI bot went through that whole learning management system and answered all those things in 28 seconds. So we've obviously got to add some stuff, but we're in a transition stage. And here's the deal. For me, God's going to take care of me. My job is to tell the truth. And if I can find companies that I can work with and tell the truth, and I truly believe in them, there you go. That's a good win for me. That's how I decide who I'm going to work with. How can you have sponsors and keep your integrity? What drives me is my teaching every day. Sometimes I'm not a good fit for what they want me to talk about. And so we'll work it out and we'll say, hey, you know what? I got this friend or this friend or this friend, and they might be a better fit. As you look at your brand, your influence, what are the ethical, moral things that you have, responsibilities you have to your profession? What are the things you'll always say no to? And are you willing to say no to those things? Are you willing to say no to major sponsors, big names, because they don't fit with your values? I'll never forget, and I won't go into details, but many years ago, I had a company who reached out to me, wanted me to work with somebody for a campaign for them, a major company all of you would have heard of. The person they wanted me to work with is somebody that I do not espouse or believe in their values. And so I prayed about it and I was in agony. Oh my goodness, we needed the money. The kids were little and all the stuff that, you got to pay for as a parent. Just prayed about it. I talked to my pastor about it and he says, listen, God's big enough to handle this for you. I'll never forget. Monday morning at 10 a.m., I had a phone call with this particular company because it was like a break day or something. And I said, listen, I don't want to go into the issues, but I can't work on this campaign. And I felt like they would judge me, but I have to be true to who God made me to be. A lot of you, this God stuff makes you feel uncomfortable, but you know what? This is just me telling my story because if it wasn't a calling, I couldn't do it. This is how God works. Sometimes they just walk away. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I have to be. This is what they said. Well, we really want to work with you. And if it's okay with you, we have this other campaign we want you to work with. You'll be making more money and you'll be doing more work. I hope you're okay with that. But it'll just be you solo. And we'd really like you to use you for this campaign. Because here's the thing. If your name means something, then brands want to work with you. If you can sell yourself as an expert in this particular topic, people are going to come to you to have your need met. Because this is about teachers. My brand is about helping teachers love and serve and teach every child who walks into their classroom. At sometimes it's about the appropriate use of ed tech. Technology is where I got my start, but great teaching is great teaching no matter what subject you're in. And so the other thing that happened is when I started seeing all these people following me, if God's given me a spotlight, I'm going to get out a mirror and start shining on other people. I don't believe in playing king or queen of the hill. I believe you make a bigger hill. And right now in the AI age, there's more room and more need for classroom teachers to be standing up and saying, okay, I'm observing this. I'm observing that. This is right. This is wrong. Here's what I'm observing to have these conversations. This is not about the age of the influencer. This is about the age of teacher sourcing. It's like when a new tool comes out, we as teachers need to converge on that tool and all test it and share what we're learning. If that's you and you're like constantly testing new stuff, you're quote, innovating like a turtle, like I talk about all the time, then you need to email me, Vicki, Vicki, at coolcatteacher.com and just say, hey, I'm testing this. I noticed that. As we look at the sponsors, it's real important. And this is for the US. You've got the FTC disclosures. Are you going to accept people who ask you for links and they'll pay you? I mean, they offer to pay me. I probably get 2 or 3 offers a week, $100, $150 to put a link on your blog and not disclose they're a sponsor. I'm not doing it because it doesn't matter if you and the public don't know. I serve a God in heaven who knows everything I do. He sees truth in the inward part. So a lot of what I'm doing now, I believe I've entered the legacy phase of what I'm doing. I want to have 1,000 episodes on 10-Minute Teacher. I'm doing the radio and TV shows so that I can have 1-hour blocks talking about one subject. If you're a math teacher, you can look at those math episodes on YouTube and you've got the best of the best, my best past interviews, the best current thinkers on math. And then I kind of weave it together with a little bit of commentary about what I've learned about great teaching. That is the purpose. So Cool Cat Teacher Talk is really part of my legacy. It's leaving something behind that'll still be relevant in 20 years. Because even if I'm talking about AI, there are principles of interacting with AI that are going to be relevant for a very long time. There's good ways of teaching. And here's the problem right now with all of these AI lesson planners. If you look at the research right now, it's showing that AI lesson planners are taking us backwards 10 years. Why am I going to put my name on something that's going to take the profession I love backwards? We should be doing gold standard project-based learning. We should be engaging our students with relevant questions at the beginning of class. We should be bringing out student voice. We should be the kind of class people want to come to. We should be treating them with respect. We should be calling them by name. These are all things I believe deeply, as you can tell by my passion. You have your own journey. And our prayer before we started this today is that God will call out some more people in the education space to speak truth, to not be able to be bought. I will be honest, the sponsorship and influencer has paid for my kids' college, it's paid for my kids' weddings, it's sent us on trips, it's taken me around the world. I'm really grateful for that. There have been times when people in my family had a break in their job and God used it to bless them financially in that season. For me, it's a calling. But here's the other thing to know is that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I don't be an influencer. Hey, I didn't start off being an influencer. I just started blogging so that I knew what it was. Like, start using AI so you know how to talk to students about it. Yeah, I'm going to talk about AI. I'm so into using it in appropriate ways, but also in ways that honor God and honor being a human. That's why I wrote about HI and AI, human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And in my class, I talk about DI, which is divine intelligence. So there is a real scramble right now in the influencer space, and it feels crowded. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to make their career on AI. There will be careers made in bought. But here's the thing. We all end up at the same place. Where are all the greatest books ever written and the biggest dreams ever dreamed? They're in the graveyard. So are all the people who thought they were indispensable. When you influence for a season and a reason. My dad, who was a farmer, who I talked about on the last episode, president of the American Soybean Association, spoke around the world, testified in Congress. He said, Vicki, you can have a lot of relevance if you're in a profession and you speak for that profession. But the moment you, quote, leave the field, your relevance diminishes immediately. My thinking on what do I say no to, what do I say yes to, in my own journey, you can kind of see, okay, who am I? What do I believe in? But here's the thing. If you're a beginner, you've got a lot to share because you can write as a beginner. Okay, I didn't understand this. I didn't know this. I didn't know how to do that. Like, that's valuable. You have a voice. You don't start your YouTube channel, your social, your whatever, because you want to be, quote, famous, because this is the case. You may have something go viral and a bunch of people see it. That doesn't mean you're famous. The other day I said, oh, they're going to be remaking John Wayne with AI. And my students were like, who's John Wayne? Fame is fleeting, but purpose, that's what lasts.
Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis. So what made you decide these specific platforms? I am going to be on this site. I am going to be on this social media. What made you decide that at the time of you joining?
I'm always asking myself, where do I want to share and where do I want to focus? So part of it is knowing your strengths. Blogging, I started because I wanted to teach my students blogging and I just wanted to share my story. When social media came around, I was doing it like I got on Twitter, hey, to see what it is. I've never really joined a social media site to say, hey, I'm going to be an influencer here. I've always joined social media sites to say, hey, how does this work? And how do I need to share it with my students? It's always where I start with everything. Know your strengths and leverage them. Okay. So I'm talking me here and you have to know you. And one of the most valuable things I ever did was the U Science test. I took it because I was testing it for my students and it taught me a lot of really valuable strengths and weaknesses. So one of my strengths is writing. And so whatever I do, I'm going to be writing. Like, for example, knowing this, I started jumping into AI and I even maybe had it write a few things that I tweaked, but I started feeling a real disconnect from my work. It wasn't resonating with me. And the one thing about doing this, John, is that I have to feel it. It impacts others because then they feel it. And so AI just takes that emotion right out. Another one of my strengths is interviewing. My parents gave me a tape recorder before I was 10. and it had a little microphone on it. And I would go around and interview the family, and I called it Recording Vicki. And I'd say, this is another episode of Recording Vicki. And today I'm interviewing Granddaddy about Thanksgiving and what he's thankful for. And you never got to know him. He was a man of few words. I loved him so much. And you couldn't get him to say anything. But I would plan, okay, I got Thanksgiving coming up, and I'm going to interview my granddaddy. How do I get him to tell his story? I probably taped 5,000 hours, maybe even 10 of my family. Now, the sad thing is, I was a broke kid and I ran out of cassette tape. So I taped over and over and over the same stuff. I mean, I tell you, what would I not do for those recordings? I've even got an old cassette that I want to restore that I think is one of the recordings. That's part of who I am. So interviewing people, because I'm naturally curious. I have a management degree from Georgia Tech, and my first jobs were as a market planner and market analyst. So I'm really good at looking at new products and services and figuring out a need for the market, and is there a need, and how do you structure those products and services? So I knew that when I picked a name, it needed to be a name that resonated, because Vicki Davis ain't going to cut it. If there's a Vicki Davis who's a dog catcher, there's a Vicki Davis who's a Power Ranger, and multiple other, because I have an alert on the name Vicki Davis. So I kind of know all of us. And I have a sister-in-law named Vicki Davis. I'm really good at research and details, and that's going to come up again in my weaknesses. I love people and I love the Lord. I love God. Okay. So those are my strengths. And so as I have done things, I've tried to focus in the area of my strengths and surround myself with people who help me in my weaknesses, and also to create habits to bump up my strengths and to help my weakness. Because here's the thing, if a kid loves math and they stink at English, you can help them all day in English, but if you help them all day in English, they're still not going to go into English probably. They're probably going to go into something with math. The strengths movement says, hey, why not amp them up in math and really help them in math, remediate them in English so they can read the math stuff, but let's use their strength to bring their weakness up. I'm kind of the strengths area of let's operate in our strengths. My family's had to learn to say, like John did the other day, hey, Mom, that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my strength. And that helps me to have people around me who do that. So I would say that's my strengths, John. I also love to speak and talk and love my students. Your principle number 2 is know your strengths and leverage your strengths in order to have a sustainable platform. So as you look at your strengths, look for patterns in your life. What have people always complimented you on? What tasks energize you rather than drain you? And what did you enjoy even as a child? These are some of the ways to unlock your strengths, but sometimes you have strengths that you don't even know. When I did the youth science, it actually said you would be a really good producer for video. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Well, now I'm doing video. And it actually helped me make the decision, was I going to go into radio and TV/YouTube or not? Because I had seen that testing on me. So, John, are we ready to talk about weaknesses, or do you have anything you want to say about strengths?
Knowing about your strengths is all well and good, but knowing your weaknesses is the best way to cover for them.
Operating in your weak area. We have to watch out for our own blind spots. Fella who he's big in the movie industry, Stephen Kendrick, I once heard him say that you have to be careful about your strengths, because that's also tends to be your biggest area of weakness. If I'm good with words, I have to be careful, because when I'm tired or cranky or upset, I can use my words to tear people down. And that's one of the things that God has really worked on me over the years is after a long day, sometimes when you're the child of a teacher, you don't get a lot of empathy or patience. And it's real easy to be short, particularly when you have decision fatigue, you're tired, you're hungry, and you come home, they're looking at you and saying, what's for dinner? One of my weaknesses is that because of that research and being detailed, is that I'm so detailed that when I record a podcast, I'm too close to it and I don't want to cut anything out. 10-Minute Teacher or this talk show that have done the best have been edited by either my husband, Kip, or John. They know me. They know what resonates with me. But they also know this is boring or this is not interesting. They will just say, hey, this needs to be cut or that needs to be cut. And the trends show on my shows. When I edit, it's probably 20% off the stats when John edits. And sometimes when he edits, it's like 50 to 100 to 150% higher than the stuff I've done. Here's the thing. I've hired people when John wasn't available or Kip wasn't available. I've hired people who were good, but they were not great. because they didn't know me. They didn't know my voice. The other thing I'm really not good at is graphics. Now, my sister Sarah is really good with graphics. She's a professor for Savannah College of Art and Design, but that's one thing the new AI has given me. A lot of times I use it as a starting point because I look at it and I'm like, oh, wow, that looks good. I know enough to recognize what looks good. The other thing that I have is I love people. And because I love people, I trust people. The other thing is, my friend Katie, she was packing up and they were moving. I called her and I said, hey, can I see you for a second? I just want to give you something, give you a hug. I know you're busy. And she says, no, I'm taking time with you. I can pack at 2 a.m. My family, we have a principle called people over packing. That means when somebody wants to talk, that's the time I stop and talk. If somebody wants to talk to me in my family, everything stops. If a student wants to talk to me, everything stops. It's about relationships. It's about using the time you have because that time doesn't last forever. So this living life with no regrets is really important to me. I can have a blind spot when it comes to who to trust. And I have made some massive mistakes.
So you keep going on about all these decisions. Research shows that teachers make over 1,500 decisions every day. On average, that's 3 decisions a minute. How do you keep yourself from just burning out between this and the podcast and teaching?
It's knowing my weaknesses, it's putting in workflow, but part of it is having an inner circle that I trust. As Lewis calls it, you build a circle of the wise. I'm always reading and always learning what great people do because here's the thing. If you want to achieve in a certain area, read what other people did in that area and you can have that same success. You don't have to always learn from your own mistakes. In fact, the smartest people learn from other people's mistakes and don't have to make it themselves. Andy Andrews is one of my husband's favorite writers, and he was homeless under a bridge. His parents had both died, had no money, and somebody came into his life to mentor him, but he started going to the library and checking out biographies of great people and started making a list of what those people did. Now he's a best-selling author, really amazing person, writes great books. But that turning point was, okay, so he doesn't have a degree. He got a high school degree, but he decided, okay, I'm going to learn from others. I'm constantly working on my workflow. A lot of times when I have a break, my goal was to work on my workflow. I really honed in on my custom instructions on my chat GPTs to make that process faster. I deeply tested Claude, which Claude is better than chat GPT for quite a few things, like working on the outline for this show. I deeply test and create procedures for myself because even this, I have 4 boxes now of these note cards by topic. And I've been collecting stories now for 20 years. Now I have all these stories in these categories, and my tabs actually mean something. I'll have to blog about that. But I'm intentional about building my second brain because I've forgotten more than I remember. I forget stuff all the time, but sometimes I'll go, oh, there was something in that book, or oh, so and so said something about it. So if I'm talking about platform, I can go pull my cards and pull out platform. So this is something that I wrote down about my priorities from some time ago. I got this system from John Maxwell. I worked on it with Tiago Forte's approach. I said, I will not trade my marriage for my career. I will not trade my relationship with my children or grandchildren for fame or fortune. I will not trade anything that would cause me to be outside God's will. And Kip has veto power over my schedule. When I look at priorities, I also pull stuff out of sermons. So a guy named Ken Jenkins, who's a famous wildlife photographer, on December 6, 2015, said, God has a right to take us home when we embezzle his glory. So that was from 2015. This is 2025, and I'm able to pull that out. Let me tell you one other thing. It says, when the Vandals sacked Rome in 455 AD, some of them sat among the Roman leaders proposing to stop the Vandals if they ever decided to invade. Foolish Romans, the Vandals were there in the Senate listening. And it's even noted in the annals of history that one of the invaders poked the Roman senators to see if they were alive because they looked like statues. Yes, they were alive. They were just sleeping. Foolish politicians sleep while the enemy invades. For me, when I read that, I'm like, the vandals were literally sitting there pushing on the senators. I didn't remember that story. I cram so much in my brain and I forget it. So the moment I read something is the moment I document that amazing story. And you could say, yeah, Vicki, that relates to politicians. But here's the thing. I'm not a politician. I'm a teacher. You are whoever you are listening to this. And the question is, are you sleeping while the enemy's at the gate? Are you protecting your family? I'll drop it all. This will be my last show right here, right now. If there's a reason from my family side that I had to stop it, and I'm okay with that because I love sharing with you. I love helping you. It's part of my purpose. But I will say, I don't wait for a good day to record. I don't wait for a good day to blog because I have found in my life that God over and over takes the worst days of my life and makes them the best. If having a good day is what it takes for me to talk about what matters, I don't know if I'd ever talk because I got bad stuff and good stuff. And every day, Pastor Michael Catt used to say that good and bad travel on parallel tracks and arrive at about the same time. Our platform principle number 3 is to understand your weaknesses and build systems. It could be a weakness in a skill, but it could also be a weakness of this moment in your life. You don't have a lot of time to plan. You don't have a lot of time to do this. And so whatever you do will fluctuate and change with your season in life. And it has to because you're a human being, not just a human doing. And those priorities really matter.
We talked about everything involving your career. When you were first starting out, because you were in all these different fields before, you could have gone into something else besides teaching. You had a degree in business and you were in that for so long. You could have started a blog about that instead. How did you figure out who you were specifically trying to reach when you started out?
So when I started out, I was writing about the perspective of a newbie because I knew I knew nothing. It's important for me to keep that and to keep writing and acknowledging the humility required to be a learner. Because anybody who says they know it all is a liar. That's where I started, and I've tried to stay there. There used to be something called Feed Blitz that showed me how many readers I had. And within the first week of launching my blog, I had 7 readers on Feed Blitz. I had 7 readers for 2 months. I thought about those 7 people. And it meant so much to me that somebody in the world was looking at what I did and maybe influencing what they did in the classroom. Now, I try not to get caught up in the stats because social media has a lot of noise. And if you really want to follow somebody, you use an RSS reader like FeedBurner and follow them or sign up and get an email every single time that they write. You have to be careful with the email part because your spam filter will grab those and not let you see them sometimes. But you intentionally set yourself for like, who helps me? Who resonates with me? And the saying is you can build a whole career on 1,000 fans. I would prefer to say that if there are 1,000 people out there who quote, get me and understand where I'm coming from, they just need to love kids and want to be a good teacher. Like, I think that's part of who I am. And if you don't love kids and if you just want to complain all the time, they're probably not going to go to me anyway, because I've been accused of being Pollyanna. You know, I've had somebody say one time, and John, you'll laugh at this. How can you know anything for teachers when everything in your life is so perfect? Exactly. But there's certain things about my career and the challenges of my day job of teaching for 23 years that are not appropriate on social media. There's been 1 or 2 times I've vented. Every time I've regretted it. When I get a troll that hits me and I'm kind to them, I get more followers than when everybody's nice.
Over the years, you've interviewed not just teachers, but also vice principals, principals. How does understanding your specific audience in those areas, not just teachers, but consultants, principals, people that are just involved in education in general, how did that affect your content going forward?
It's about focusing everybody on helping kids learn and understanding this generation. I think we have to treat our students with respect because we get what we give. If I give respect and love, if I mess up and apologize and I give grace, I get more grace. That doesn't mean I'm easy. You had me as a teacher. You know I'm not easy. I want people to be passionate about creating a great educational system at every moment in history because children can't wait. The other thing is, Pastor Michael preached a great thing a while back called Not on My Watch. And it was a picture from Ken Jenkins where there was like on a ledge, but what you didn't see was his pups were down right up under that ledge. And he was like looking alert. That's because he was looking for danger. And this is our watch and our time in history. And when I see danger, you better believe I'm going to say something. I talked last week about some eye tracking privacy concerns. And I want to protect and I want to be part of like making a difference and saying the things that need to be said. And, you know, John, when I pick my guests, I don't pick for people who always are going to agree with me. What two people are ever going to agree? If two people agree on everything, one person's unnecessary. So I pick people who are different from me, different walks of life, different beliefs. That's okay. When you take that many episodes and you start hearing common things from all of them, that means there are timeless truths about teaching that everybody can learn, that everybody needs to know. And every vendor that supports teachers like me needs to understand the realities of the classroom. And every administrator who supports teachers like me and loves kids and wants their school to be a great place. Teaching is hard, but learning the principles of being a good teacher is not that hard. There are basic principles. There are basic principles of being a great administrator. The hard part is doing it. It's not learning it, it's doing it. We've called the 10-Minute Teacher Coffee Break PD. If I could be the kind of thing, they could look at my shows. We have 5 days a week, and they can look at the 5 shows, and one of them something they can listen to on one of their coffee breaks or on the way to school. Then I feel like we've made a difference. And when I get an email from somebody who says, I had a student I was really struggling with and I gave them a second chance, it's really turned their life around. Then it's like, yeah, this is why I was called to this.
You were talking about creating content before, but after the Muse's fire hydrant runs out, how do you create content consistently? Because sometimes you just run out of ideas.
So platform principle number 5 is consistency builds trust. When I did my youth science test, I actually go off the chart for idea generation. Okay, that's a strength for me, but I will never brag on not having writer's block. One time I told somebody I can't imagine writer's block, and the good Lord allowed me to have 2 years of it. After that, agony for somebody who loves words, couldn't even do it. For me, it's reading good books. It's talking to interesting people. It's always listening. It's these index cards that I have on my desk. It's just reading my Feedly reader. And honestly, John, it's praying. Hey, what's next? Where do I need to focus? Because there's a lot of noise. There's value in human curated content. And if you have a couple people you trust and you can read their stuff, and maybe you don't have to work so hard, because here's the thing, I'm going to read all the stuff anyway. Whether I share it with all you or not, I'm going to read it. I'm not going to say, John, that I don't run out of ideas, because that would be a lie. And the moment I brag on something, there's a moment that I'm going to really have a problem. But I think for me, the big issue is not the fire hydrant. It's in selecting the conversations to join in. For example, I've intentionally chosen to be apolitical. That means I'm not going to jump into politics. Okay. Some people unfollow me for that. How can you call yourself a good person and not get in politics? Because here's the thing. Republicans and Democrats right here in the United States all seem to be standing on the moral high ground. When you have everybody standing on the moral high ground, usually that ground is pretty low. That is not what I'm called to. I'm not called to politics. I actually worked in D.C. for a summer, but I am called to help this generation get the kind of teachers, the kind of respect, the kind of help that they deserve. So while everybody else is fussing, I want to focus on what this generation needs. You might think, you don't know who you are. You're not that noble. Well, I think teaching is a noble calling. And I also think what I do on my platform is a calling, and it's noble and it's important. When you choose at this point to focus on politics, you're alienating half your audience in education.
And a big part of politics is the other side is always slinging mud, and you're slinging mud right back. You end up filthy at the end of it.
So my dad was president of the American Soybean Association, and he went and testified in Congress. I can't remember which one it was, because sometimes the Democrats got mad at him and sometimes there was Republicans, just depending on who was in the White House. I heard him testify. And the next week, there was an article that came out, I believe it was in the Washington Post, that said that my daddy was a drug dealer. That he was a drug dealer. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever read. Oh my goodness. I mean, your grandpa barely takes an aspirin. When do you have time to do that? He's traveling the world helping farmers. When I saw that, I have kept that in my mind all these years in that. All the people who are upset and don't know who to believe. I know where my solid ground is. My solid ground is God, and that's why I stay grounded in the Word. Politics has always been the same. Study ancient Rome. Study any society in history. Politics has always been the same. People fuss, people fight. Hopefully, you can have moral people in those positions who have a higher calling and know that God sees, and they can be moral, ethical people behind closed doors. But if you have people who are not moral and ethical and are accepting bribes and behaving in ways that aren't appropriate, and listen, it's on all sides, don't pretend like it's not, then you have a problem. So consistency does build trust, but also consistently staying on topic. People have said, hey, we want you to represent our makeup. We want you to represent our boutique. Okay, that's not my message. It's not what I'm about. It might give me a temporary boost, but consistency builds trust. And that goes back to knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, know what you stand for, and knowing what you'll do.
What specific tools do you recommend for people starting off on their platforms? Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk.
This is a good place to end this show. We are going to, in the next show, talk about tools that match your workflow. We're going to talk about values-based decisions. I'm going to take you through all the different tools I use, how I selected them. For those of you who look at the Cool Cat Teacher Talk on YouTube, John, we're going to go through all of the workflow and systems that I use currently, and I may mention some in the past. So as you're building your brand, listen to last time's episode. All of this is going to go to coolcatteacher.com/brand tips. Platform principle number 1, authentic purpose and principle create sustainability. Principle number 2, know your strengths and leverage them as you share. Number 3, understand your weaknesses and build systems and build your circle of the wise. Number 4, be clear on your audience. Who is your audience and what is your purpose? So even though I got a note the other day from a vendor who I'm doing work for that said, you're the most listened to podcast for principals. I'm like, oh, cool. That's awesome. So principals listen, but it's because my focus is on the classroom. And number 5, platform principle number 5, consistency builds trust. Next time, we're going to get to number 6, how to pick tools that match your workflow. So whatever influencing you do or brand creation you do, we're going to go through all the tools. I like to talk to kids about these tools and what it looks like to be an influencer in the real world. Thank you, educators, for listening to this show. This has been Cool Cat Teacher Talk. This is episode 2 in our personal branding series of 3 shows. And this one is building your platform with a purpose. You can hear everything in this episode and get all the show notes at coolcatteacher.com/brand tips. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you later, educator.
Stay in the loop. Visit coolcatteacher.com.
I'd also like to mention that Cool Cat Teacher Talk is now a podcast. So subscribe in your favorite podcatcher. See you later, educator.